everybody. Welcome to our behavior change project. Anna, myself, Angie, Chelsea, Drew, and Heather, we all created a behavior change project for increasing physical activity. We all wanted to use Fitbit step trackers to help increase our daily activity and see who could continue increasing the most throughout our baseline and intervention phases. The purpose of the study was to increase the total daily steps and to increase physical activity throughout our daily lives. A common goal for a lot of individuals, especially after New Year's, is to increase their physical activity and become more fit and healthy. The Fitbit is a great way to track steps and monitor steps and movement throughout the day. It also has challenges and friend groups to make it fun, where you can interact with friends and motivate each other. And the Fitbit challenges actually help to increase your daily activity, but we wanted to see how much it truly does help. So we all tested it for a week for baseline and 2 weeks to see how that would work.
The supporting literature that we chose is called Maintaining High Ambulatory Activity Levels of Sedentary Adults with a Reinforcement Thinning Schedule. The article was done by Andre, Berry, Litt, and Petrie. The purpose of the article was to evaluate a reinforcement thinning schedule for maintaining high activity levels. The participants that were eligible for the research were 18 years, they had to be 18 years or older, and they had to have walked less than 6,000 steps per day. 61 participants were in the monitoring only condition or the monitoring plus reinforcement thinning condition. There were 4 total phases. There was baseline, there was fixed interval monitoring plus reinforcement, which lasted 1 to 3 weeks. A randomization phase, which was between weeks 4 and 15, and then the last phase was the follow-up phase, which were weeks 16 through 24. So it was a very extensive research study. The baseline phase encouraged the participants to engage in their usual activities through the day and wear their pedometers. If they walked more than 6,000 steps, the participants were thanked for their time, and the rest of the participants that walked less than 6,000 steps moved on to the next phase, which was the fixed interval monitoring plus reinforcement phase. The participants were encouraged to walk more or equal to the 10,000 steps per day. They were scheduled to meet with a researcher 3 times a week for the 3 weeks of the fixed interval monitoring plus reinforcement phase. And if they went to the meetings, they earned a draw for each day they walked 10,000 steps or more. The participants were able to draw for prizes such as $1 gift cards, $5 gift cards, toiletries, or just an encouraging message. At the end of this phase, the participants who walked 10,000 or more steps on at least 14 of the 21 days, they could move on to the next phase. The next phase was the randomization phase, and this phase was broken up into 2 parts. The monitoring only, which were the participants were randomized in these phases, and the participants that were in the monitoring only phase earned $5 gift card on the random meetings that were set up that they attended. And these gift cards were not contingent on the steps that they had per day. And the other part of the randomization phase was monitoring plus reinforcement thinning schedule. And if the participants attended the randomly selected meeting dates, they were able to earn a $5 gift card, and they were also able to earn bonus draws for the draws that they had before in the phase earlier. They continued that reinforcement. But these rewards were contingent on the step counts that they had per day. The next phase was the follow-up phase, where the participants were encouraged to wear their pedometers and keep their step counts 10,000 steps or more daily, and that they were also scheduled for follow-up evaluations for the last phase. The results of the study were that the monitoring plus reinforcement thinning schedule maintained high rates of walking when it was in effect. And once the walking had been established, it can be maintained through high levels of reinforcement. Those were the results from the study, and the limitations were that the efficacy of the reinforcement to initiate the change in behavior was not assessed, and the study did not determine if the increase in daily steps impacted or improved physical health. And next, we're going to go into our methods for our project.
Hi everyone. I'm here now. Sorry.
Hello. So for the methods, the participants in our study, we had 5 students. That includes myself, Heather, Anna, Angie, Chelsea, and Drew. We are all enrolled in SPCE 611 at Ball State University. For the setting, all participants are wearing their Fitbit throughout daily living activities across all environments. The materials that we used were the Fitbit, which counted our steps, our cell phones, which helped to access the Fitbit app and the daily challenge, and the Fitbit application, which collected our data, and that is how we accessed the daily showdown challenge. The behavior that we were looking to increase were our steps. A Fitbit step is defined as any occurrence of the Fitbit application tracking steps and additional vertical and/or horizontal movement. This may include a person putting one foot in front or behind their body, followed by their other foot in a forward or backward motion, or during daily living activities like walking, running, jumping, dancing, or hiking. An example of this would be Molly walking down the hallway, and a non-example would be Molly sitting in a chair shaking her wrist to falsify the Fitbit data. The design we used was an AB design, and due to the time constraints, we only used the AB design. Now Drew is going to talk about the data.
So for data collection, we use our Fitbits and the Fitbit application on our personal cell phones, and we all made sure that it was updated to the latest software. Each member of the group wore their Fitbit 24 hours a day, give or take a couple hours where we needed to charge it throughout the week. And one of us would invite the rest of the group members to a daily challenge, so we all had to accept that. The app tracks everyone's steps and movements to determine a winner from the challenge for whoever ended up having the most steps. And whoever wins the most challenges within the intervention phase receive $10 from each of the other group members. Baseline and intervention were both collected for 5 days, which ended up being Monday during the work week. And track the steps, like I said, and then the data was transferred to a Excel spreadsheet. Next, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the integrity of the project. Validity, the participants, we all had to fill out a survey and answer the following questions of, did you have a New Year's resolution? If yes, what was it? And if no, what could one be? And have you been working on this goal, or can you now, and how? So the survey determined that the group members were passionate about increasing their physical activities. That was one thing that we all had in common regarding this survey. Participating in this study will help the group members make progress towards their New Year goal of becoming more physically active. Treatment integrity. Each group member, we were to sync our Fitbit to our phones within 12 hours of each daily challenge, and then upload that number to a Google Doc for data entry. The numbers can't be altered in the application, so another member can check someone else's steps. And we did that by following them in alphabetical order by first name. Number shown to the doc for social validity. Each member will check and calculate the IOA for the same person each day throughout the intervention. And the running total for the challenges won from the intervention phase was listed down at the bottom of our spreadsheet. Most challenges won for the most steps will win and receive the $10 from each person. And our total count IOA was the number of steps divided by the number of steps recorded from the Fitbit application times 100, and that equaled the total count percentage. Next, we're going to get into the results of our project, starting with Anna.
My results, the baseline range was 4,292. The baseline average was 8,126.6. I just did my daily routines for the baseline, just to see how many steps I would get. And the least count of steps that I had was due to I did not work with certain clients that day. The higher number, I have clients that are very active. So I was more active on those days than I was with the clients that were not as active. And I also did not normally engage in a lot of physical activity, so my steps were lower. For my intervention, I did my daily schedules, and then I tried to add a little bit more of physical activity so that I could get more steps. The Fitbit application was really helpful because it challenged me to want to beat my peers, because I didn't want to lose and I didn't want to have to pay anyone else $10. But I also have a dip in my intervention on the last day that we did our data collection. I actually thought that I had synced my steps from my Fitbit to my phone on the Fitbit application, but it turns out that I did not, that I forgot. So I normally would have gotten 11,000 steps on the last day that we took the data, but because I did not sync it before 12 a.m., the only sync steps that I had was 770 steps. And so that was the only, that was my count for the day. I could not change my data because on the application it said 11,000, but for the challenge, since I did not sync my phone, it only counted for 770 of those 11,000 steps. So that's why I have a large dip in my data on that day. But other than that, my data was increasing after the intervention was placed. And so that is why I have a big dip in my data. So next we're going to hear from Angie.
Okay, so my data also has a little bit of a dip, but it really shows the integrity of doing a research project. Things happen. I was sick on that day. So it skews my data a little bit, but had we continued going on, I'm sure we would have seen a more consistent step line. For my baseline, I had a large range because of that. The baseline range for that area was 11,468, and the average for mine was 7,693. So then moving into the intervention phase, I was much more consistent with my steps. I did have a increase immediately on day 2, and then it kind of mellowed out a little bit throughout the rest of the week. But overall, the range was a lot closer. It was only 2,296 versus the 11. My steps were really consistent throughout that week. And then the average was 9,342. So a lot higher of an average. Show the step trackers, the challenges with friends, the goal end of having the most steps throughout the week was very motivating, and it really helped to increase all of that. The Fitbit app with the challenges, I can see throughout the day as people are syncing, I can see their increase in their steps. And of course, it makes me not want to lose. So I want to increase mine and make sure that that's continuing. So the results for my data alone really do show that from the baseline to the intervention, that the Fitbit app does help to increase my physical activity and my overall daily steps. And next we have Chelsea with her data.
Okay, so next up is my data. My baseline range was 6,351, and the baseline average was 7,604.8. For the baseline, I tried to just live my life. Normally, as you can see, I work Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays over the summer, so I had a higher activity level there originally, and Thursdays and Fridays it kind of dropped off a bit. During the intervention, my range was 9,616, and then the average was 10,217. So I got a great increase in my averages from baseline to intervention. So I was really happy about that. The first 3 days especially, I was very, very motivated, kind of like how Angie was saying, how we could see where everyone else was during the week or during the day. It was very motivating for me. There was a few times when I was getting ready for bed, and then I saw that I was close to like Angie or Anna, so I would do a few laps around my apartment to catch up to them. As well as something else that was very motivating for me was the hourly reminders from 9 to 5 to take 250 steps a day. I hadn't realized how sedentary I normally am until I was getting little vibrations on my wrist every hour to get up and do some movement. So you'll see on day 3 of my intervention data, I hit 15,000 steps. I was in an airport and my flight got delayed, and I was worried because, as you can see, the next 2 days my data points are very low. I wanted to try and get as many steps in as possible. So I was very motivated to pace back and forth and get as many steps in as I possibly could. The next 2 days, as you can see, were in the 6,000 range steps. And as crazy as it sounds, that was with me doing a lot of physical activity those days. However, I was sitting in a conference from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So I had to work out a lot in the morning, and then I was sedentary for the rest of the day. The Fitbit app really helped motivate me to get those steps in, as well as being a part of the study, just so that I wouldn't be as far behind everyone else. So I found it very motivating that way. That's all for me. And next up is Drew.
All right, so my data, my baseline range was 5,352, and my baseline average was 13,043.2. My intervention range was 11,471, and my intervention average was 10,099.8. So during the baseline phase, kind of to go along with the theme of everyone else, I didn't do any extra physical activity. That data is my normal day at work and at home, working with 2 clients and then being in a support position for the third and last session of the day. During the intervention phase, my schedule was slightly different at work. The first 3 days during the intervention phase, training at work, and it's a slightly physical type training, so I was able to get quite a few steps, but then the next 2 days I had off of work. So the 4th day of the intervention, I was sitting at the vet's office for a couple hours waiting for my dog. And the final day, my lowest day, as you can see, I was in a car riding Johnson, so I wasn't able to get out and get many steps from that. So that was before and after I got there. I was actually going to a Spartan race. So despite it not being during the actual intervention phase, I was still able to increase my physical activity by completing that race that I was going to, which was actually part of one of my goals for the year that we had talked about before. Despite what my graph is showing, I was still more motivated to increase my step count during the intervention phase, because I wanted to try to win every single challenge that we did, and I wanted to improve on my step count from the time before. It was really great being able to be in the challenges daily, so I could see what scores I needed to be, or if someone was catching up to me. Like we mentioned before, there were a couple of times where I was sitting down for the evening, but then I saw that I was really close to being in first, so I got up and went outside for a walk. Also, I would take my dog on longer nightly walks. So during the baseline phase, and really before this project in general, we have this certain route that I always take walking my dog, but I caught myself during the intervention phase saying like, oh, I'm going to turn here, or I'm going to go even farther, just so I could get those extra steps. And I feel that even though this project is done, we can still keep up this physical activity, since we all apparently are motivated to keep it up and keep doing it. And now that we're all friends on the Fitbit app, we can continue to hold each other accountable for the rest of the year to achieve our goals. So next, we're going to listen to Heather.
Hello. So I was really excited to get a true baseline for myself, just to see how many steps I did take a day. So I found that in the first week, my average was 7,921 steps. I increased my average by about 1,300 steps to 9,259 steps throughout the week. My range also increased by over 1,200 steps. During the intervention phase, I paid close attention to my Fitbit and how like every activity I did increased my steps. 2 of the days, my boyfriend went for a walk with me, which really helped to get my steps up. Also, it was really motivating to feel like when you reach 10,000 steps, like, the Fitbit vibrates and everything, and it's like, ooh, I can keep going. One high point in my baseline was at 12,000 steps, and that was because I went to a Red Sox game, so I was doing a lot of walking. But as you can see, like during the baseline, that was my highest point. And then I found that my other points really, depended on what clients I had during the day. If I had a client in a school setting that we kind of just stood back and, more like watch the child, that my steps were lower. And that if I had a younger child, I was more active throughout my day. I also think it's really helpful, like at the end of the day, to come home and see like, oh, I have 7,000 steps. Like instead of sitting on the couch, maybe I should just get up and do something to reach my goal. It helped me to see my group mates on the Fitbit challenge as well. Like I think as Chelsea had said, like if I was about to go upstairs and I saw that I was really close to beating somebody, that was just more of an incentive to walk around and maybe, throw in a load of laundry or something and stay up for a little while. Let me see. I won the challenge once the first week, and then I actually ended up winning twice the second week because I was more aware of the steps and also to win the money. And I think that overall this was a great incentive for increasing steps, and I liked that I was able to do this not only with just like one other person, but the 4 other group members really made a difference. So next, Chelsea will talk about the limitations of our project.
Okay, and just to piggyback off what Anna and Drew said again, I think how we were all working against each other, but with each other at the same time was really a motivating aspect for all of us, and probably something we can all continue to do even though the project is over. So on to the limitations of the project. There were so many great things, but there were also some, areas that had some limitations. So the study was conducted with only 5 participants. So as we all know, the more people that are a part of a study, the more reliable the results can be. So only having 5 participants kind of was not ideal, but it was great for the replication. The participants were also, this being a school project and taking place over the summer, we were under time constraints. So we were unable to participate in the full study, which also hindered our ability to achieve a true baseline and get a steady baseline before we started the intervention. So that would have been, it would have been cool to see if we actually got to do a true baseline. Another hindrance was if the Fitbit was not synced within the 12-hour time frame, then the steps recorded were kind of skewed, and that messed up Anna's data one day. But of course, we wanted to keep the integrity of the project, and we didn't want to jeopardize that at all. So we kept it that way, or we didn't adjust the data at all. I guess the other limitation that I can talk about is that it was unclear if the increased step count really affected our participants' overall health. We would have needed another way to measure that over time. Okay, I'm also going to do the conclusion to our project. So though we didn't achieve the same results as the original study, overall the participants did increase our average number of steps when we were incentivized with the $10 contingency. Just again, as everyone stated before, that really was, money is very motivating. But another motivator was also working against other people. Regardless of how many steps we had during the day, regardless of how many steps we had during the day, the Fitbit was wonderful, and it gave us motivation either by buzzing us on our wrist, reminding us to do 250 steps an hour, or reminding us to just look at how our friends are doing and then celebrating with us if we did reach a goal. So overall, it was really a great experience and a great project. All right, thank you.